Now I'm very excited to be back again. I'm Elizabeth Parks. I hope I've met you before. If not, let's connect on LinkedIn, and excited to have this group of industry players join us to talk about some of the things that they saw at CES and some of the innovation that's taking place across really all different segments of the connected home and extending beyond the home, even within the healthcare environment. And so very excited to have Alarm.com, Plumeria, XR Health, Scheffling, and Ivani join me for this next session. We're going to be talking about what it means to be moving past the innovator stage and how to reach these new buyers. Also, the new value that is being created through devices, data, and the services that stem from them. And then, of course, the future of tech is all about AI. And so this will be a big part of our discussion today, how these companies are weaving AI into the new solutions and also how they view the market coming forward. So I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves for 30 seconds, and then we'll go into our questions. If you're in the audience, please go ahead. Feel free to put any questions in the chat or the Q&A, and I will take those as the conversation goes. So, Steve, I'm really excited to welcome you today. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and Alarm.com.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I'm Steve Chazin. I'm Vice President of Products for Alarm.com. I've been here for about 6 years. I focus on our business intelligence, artificial intelligence, next-gen products, and wellness solutions. And we used CES as an opportunity to launch a few new things in that space, but also learn about the trends that are impacting the consumers that are having their lives impacted by these new technologies. So I'm excited to talk about what we learned and discuss the trends with my fellow panelists.
Great. We appreciate you being here. And if you're not following Steve on LinkedIn, he puts out a great blog and on all things CES otherwise too. So we appreciate you being here. Next up, we have Roland with Plumeria. Roland, thank you so much for joining. We're excited to have you in the conversation.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Roland, and the CEO of Plumeria and co-founder. So we're headquartered in the UK with offices in London and Amsterdam. And Plumeria offers a full AI solution for smart home cameras and video doorbells. So currently that's people detection, vehicle detection, pet detection, but also familiar face identification and stranger identification. Because we're able to run AI on device, which is important for privacy compliance, and truly with unmatched accuracy, we've won several major US-based video doorbell and smart home camera companies as our customers. So if you go to the retail stores of Walmart and Best Buy, you'll see smart home camera products with our software in them. And I'm excited to talk in this panel about the trends that we're seeing with our customers in the smart home camera and video doorbell domain.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us. Definitely a lot to talk about. That context and awareness of what's going on is really critical for next steps, especially in security. We also have Aaron Orr with XR Health. So thanks for joining us today. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. Aaron Orr, founder and CEO of XR Health. We are using virtual reality, augmented reality, and the new buzzword special computing in order to treat patients. We have over 150 different types of applications for a variety of use cases, from physical therapy, occupational therapy, to mental health and pain management. Two business models. One is we are using the technology or basically selling the technology to hospitals and rehab centers. And the other line of business is we have our own virtual clinics where we are shipping headsets to patient home and treating them remotely. We completed over 500,000 VR treatments to date, conducting VR treatment every 7 minutes, operations in the US, Australia, Europe. And I'm very excited about this panel about the future of this technology and how it fit in nicely with all the new other technologies, including AI, which I'll discuss more later on.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. We're excited to hear more from you as well. And next we have Jeff, the co-founder of Scheffling. So Jeff, welcome. Go ahead and share a little bit more about yourself and the company that you co-founded.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is co-founder of Chefly. We focus in the connected kitchen space, and we also used to develop a pure software solution to help users manage their home inventory and trying to streamline their kitchen workflow. And ever since the company was acquired in 2022, we started developing a hardware device, which is a camera and can be used to detect your food items in your fridge or your pantry. And with the computer vision technology, we aim to automate the entire inventory management for housekeeping. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're excited to hear from you, and especially, taking something and creating new. I mean, you're doing something that really is exactly what we're talking about as far as innovation, taking hardware, creating meaning out of it, and then attaching the service because of the information that you can get and what you can do with that data. So very excited to have you join us today. Also, we have Matthew Wooten. He is with Avani, the co-founder and CTO. So Matt, thank you again for joining us. We're always excited to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me as always. Avani, we're a technology provider that created this tech we call Sensify, which is a means of deploying occupancy sensing through firmware and software updates to existing wireless communication devices. Basically, the ability to deploy sensing, at crazy scale that you can do with software, and seeing what that means for OEMs that weren't previously offering sensing at that scale, and creating outcomes like providing home security, convenience use cases, etc., to devices that weren't doing it previously. Excited to see what it's like lighting up millions of devices over the next year, and again, interested in the trends and being part of the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you for being here too. So we're going to start the conversation really focused in on moving past the innovator stage and even the early adopters. Then we're going to talk about the value of devices, the data, the different services, and also, of course, I think AI is going to be interweaved throughout our conversation as well. So I want to start off about this idea of being at a tipping point and really moving where technology becomes a standard part of consumers' lives, a standard as part of a workflow in serving consumers, perhaps with healthcare, an expectation of real-time data. I should be able to know what's going on right now because of technology. And I really want to start off in this idea of the standard of care with healthcare. This is a huge topic, and healthcare really is going to be and already being transformed because of technology. And so, Aaron, if you can share a little bit more of what you're seeing, particularly maybe in the past couple of years with spatial computing, with that integration of technology as part of the therapy, and even how you came about that.
So I'll start with maybe a little bit of a higher point of view. I believe that we weren't meant to interact with computers using our thumb or using 2D interface. A lot of people believe this is the only way we ever communicated and interacted with computers, but we are living in a 3D environment, and I believe that this is how we'll interact with computers in the future. And when you're looking at healthcare specifically, it opens up a whole new set of possibilities, because a lot of things that are being done today in a very manual way, with no way to actually quantify processes, in an experience which is basically the same as it was 200 years ago, I think spatial computing will open a lot of different types of capabilities. The problem that we have in the healthcare arena is that most of the business incentives and the economics around healthcare today are based on fee-for-service, which basically means that you're getting paid based on the number of minutes your clinician is conducting any type of service. And when you try to implement new technology, by definition, it takes back the productivity until the organization can actually utilize the technology to the full scale, because you have a learning curve like any other new technology. And in healthcare, no one want to take risks, so it's becoming even more problematic. But I have to say that after doing what we're doing for 8 years, because of the technology is getting better, cheaper, lighter, we are seeing more and more organizations implementing this technology at scale. And we are very, very optimistic, and we believe 2024 will be the tipping point of market adoption for this technology.
Sure, and in so many ways, it's a necessity in the sense of labor and just the ability to try to get to all the people who need care. I mean, there's just shortages everywhere, and so just as a quick follow-up question, I mean, as far as the idea of technology replacing humans or just really augmenting, Aaron, do you have any comments on that? And then Steve, we'll come over to you next.
So I'll just not to steal the thunder of the entire panel, but I think it like in other use cases, it will be a process at the beginning. And as I'm telling our clinicians, our job is to turn them into super clinicians. Instead of treating one-on-one, they need to get to 1-to-100 or even 1-to-1,000 by utilizing technology. Having said that, moving forward 50 years from now, I completely see a scenario where you'll get psychology treatment by an AI, where you will have the look and feel of a psychologist. And overall, it will improve access, reduce cost, and help more people. But we still have a long way to go in regulation and reimbursement and liabilities. There's a lot of things we need to unlock. But first, let's try to utilize the technology that we have that it already exists in order to improve access and improve compliance and outcomes. And then we'll talk about what will happen 50 years from now.
Sure, absolutely. Steve, give us your view here on where we are with tipping points, the standardization of technology. I mean, being infused in everywhere, everything we do.
Yeah. First of all, Ron, I agree. I think the key word there is access. Almost another way to think about it is democratization. Most technology companies try to provide a new capability that gives normal humans superpowers. If you think about the early days of computers, they were locked in rooms that only certain people could have, and now they're in our pockets. I think the same with healthcare. As far as tipping points, what's interesting is you look at the Jeffrey Moore curve that you showed earlier, and you showed about 33% of people in the smart home are in the middle. What you have to realize is the typical home is made up by a bunch of people on different parts of that curve. And you're in a tipping point when you no longer find the technology control through one human in that home. Many of us, if you've ever installed any new piece of technology, from a router to a oven, there's always some person in the home who knows how to use that better than other people. And everyone comes to that person for help. And the way you know this person is when the internet goes down, they're the ones who get blamed. When you're beyond the tipping point is when anyone can use that tool. And it's just a commonplace capability we take for granted. And so our phones are now those tools, when before we needed specialists to put them in our cars. But what's interesting about all of this is how quickly that changes, where you go from not having access to the tool to everybody having access to the tool to nobody having access because a new tool took that mantle. Think about cassette machines, CD players, DVDs, iPods, answering machines. These were all things that were invented in our generation that no longer exist because something else does a better job at that. That's what's so exciting about shows like CES, is you get to find those new things and get excited by how they're going to impact our world.
Well, and all this really requires a lot of education for the consumer, right? And it's a different consumer that you're selling to. And so, Matt, maybe we'll come over to you, and also I'd love to hear from Jeff and Roland on this in terms of creating familiarity around some of this is new stuff, completely new. Some of it is old stuff, doing new things and providing new value. And so what are some of the ways to bring awareness and really market these new solutions to the consumer, or if they're buying through a specific channel, the security dealer, HVAC, whoever, you got to educate that channel as well.
Yeah, and it's a great point and an area of very active discussion. I know for us, as we look at deploying to millions of devices overnight that weren't previously a thing, we have to work with that partner to very explicitly sell collectively what we're capable of, and not oversell the capability, right? As technologists, right, we know what using a product is like, what its capabilities are. We also know what the roadmap is, but I think there's a tendency to want to sell the roadmap and not what's available today. The idea of you put AI as a brand and you slap it on something and you're like, oh yeah, that can solve any potential issue with it, is a current worrying trend that I see that seems a bit scary in the market at large. So for us, providing tools, illustrations, and examples, which include the sort of nitty gritty, I think is really important, right? The idea of, this fanciful end state that, someone just comes home, they open the door, the lights turn on and whatnot. Like, you can achieve that, but there's a lot of nitty gritty that goes into that. And I think at the moment, right, being intentional about, hey, you do have to set that up. You do have to provide those links, and that it's coming, but like not overselling it and being kind of upfront and honest is something that I think will drive trust in the industry, and is a balance that I think we're seeing many industry experts kind of struggle with. We often, when we talk to a partner, right, we've heard them say, well, can you do this thing that's on a roadmap, 5-10 years from now? And it's like, eventually, sure, but for now, let's focus on what can happen today and actually deliver on something that a user wants. And they don't care how it happens, right? They just want it to happen, and to happen reliably, so that, as Steve was saying, you don't have that one person in the household that's the only person that can manage your home automation system.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points there, particularly around products just working and doing what they say they're supposed to do. And so, Roland, I wanted to see if you wanted to jump in here. Any comments to jump on top of what Matt just said?
So we're active in a smart home camera and video doorbell domain. So I can add some insights there. So what we're seeing, and I think everyone who is active in this domain knows this, but AI features are getting bundled now with cloud storage. So to make these monthly subscriptions more attractive. Providing cloud storage alone for a few dollars per month is just not sufficient anymore. We have to find more ways to provide more value, or new ways to provide more value to users, and make the subscriptions more attractive for consumers. And bundling AI features with cloud storage is one way to do this. So smart home cameras today, just one way that AI features can provide more value is that these smart home cameras today just generate far too many irrelevant events and notifications. So users just simply turn them off and stop interacting with the app because it's just too annoying. And you can imagine, if you then have 3 or 4 cameras in and around the home, you get 3 times more irrelevant notifications. So 3 times more annoyance. So let's say you're washing your car in your driveway for 20 minutes. Today, you can easily, after you've washed your car, you see 8 notifications on your phone screen, on your lock screen. None of those events are interesting to you. We call this the boy who cried wolf effect, where users get so many notifications that they don't care about it and turn off the notifications. But at the same time, if a stranger is lurking in your front yard at 3 a.m. in the night, you definitely want to know that. So I think one way to provide real value to users is when smart home cameras and doorbells only provide you with the info that's actually relevant for you at the right moments. Also today, if you open your smart home camera app or your doorbell app, you see a long timeline that is cluttered with irrelevant events. I just don't think that makes sense. But if you look at Facebook or Instagram and then you open that app, you see those posts first at the top of your screen that matters, or that most likely will matter the most for you. And I think that's we'll see something similar to the apps in the smart home camera and video doorbell domain over the next few years.
Well, and we're tracking doorbells at 20% adoption right now. And so that means about 24 million households in the US who have internet have a smart doorbell. Lots and lots of room still to grow. And, you know, consumers really do understand the value of a camera and a doorbell at this point with the video feed. And so that video is becoming really a high priority for everybody to have, to know what's going on. And then the AI, of course, becoming incredibly important for all the things you just noted there, Roland. We're also seeing cameras being used in all sorts of other ways. And so, Jeff, would love to hear you jump in and share some of your thoughts on, you know, AI being a tool. And I mean, your whole business here is built off of that. So share a little bit more on where you see this going and some of the changes that have happened, particularly with the market in the sense of it being ready to, you know, and a willingness to pay for these kinds of technologies.
Thanks for the opportunity. I think before I get into that, so I'll just quickly show you guys the product we're building. You know, it's a camera device, and the difference is that this is specialized in using and monitoring food inside the fridge environment. It has to overcome a lot of challenges like low temperature and like no Wi-Fi signals. So quite a task to do. And that's just the first step, like taking the image itself. And after that, you have to use a bunch of algorithms and then whatever like software capabilities to enable image recognition. I mean, everybody thinks as like you have to build a powerful model and then recognize items. It's just a matter of how powerful that model is. But we end up having an assembly of multiple different models working at the same time. It's actually way more complicated than we thought it would be. And the reason we're building this is we see there's a trend in the market that a camera as a solution, like the Ring Bell, probably the most popular ones. And then you start to see cameras, security cameras around your house, and with one more camera inside, like oven to monitor your food, and then to adjust the cooking temperature and so on and so forth. And now with the camera inside the fridge, introduced by Samsung, LG, and multiple other appliance manufacturers, the point is to help users see what they have in the fridge to reduce food waste, and also they also hope that they can do automatic inventory management. So clearly there's a market need for this. The challenge is it's really difficult to do, and just by thinking about how messy your fridge is, you can imagine like how difficult that is. But we're really happy that we're pretty close to launch the product in March, and I think there is something out there for us. I agree with what Matt mentioned, that a lot of companies try to sell the roadmap instead of the actual product. So, especially for a company who's trying to build a brand new product in this category, like, literally we can't just copycat anyone's product in the market right now because there isn't any. So it's very it's very tentative to sell the roadmap, telling users how great it is. And then the danger of that is when you sell the roadmap, yet you can't achieve it, and you tend to kill the product, right? Like when you launch it, users are going to use it, and then they find it's not what you said. They're gonna be disappointed. For us, it's entire business. So the go-to-market strategy for us is like the key. We tend to choose beta users and then do the test and then collect feedbacks when everything's more, like a slow rollout process. Yeah, so hopefully I can share more information further down the line.
Yeah, no, that's great, and congratulations on the launch at CES and the product coming out in March. A lot of what you're talking about also centers the conversation around the data, and I think everybody here has a vested interest in data. I want to go back to you, Aaron, and see, we know that you're collecting a lot of very sensitive data. So of course you have to be HIPAA compliant and all these things around data security and privacy, but maybe you can comment just on the value of all that data and how it's being utilized, especially if you're thinking about treatment plans or really working to help people in their daily lives. And then I think probably a number of you could be talking on the role of data. So I'd like to kind of go around on this question.
So for us, it's not even a question mark, right? Like, I don't have a business if I won't have very high strict, cyber capabilities and HIPAA compliant. Like, again, it's an integral part from the day the company started. I do think there's a very high potential to improve outcomes by quantifying processes that until now was almost impossible to quantify. Ask yourself, how do you pick a physical therapist today, or how do you pick a psychologist or a social worker or occupational therapist? Usually it's the answer that you'll get is, I heard that guy is good. Someone told me that they're, and we need to move forward to a point where we can actually see results of our clinicians and data for the clinic, that we can say, okay, this clinic is outperforming that clinic, and here are different type of measurements that we can compare as a consumer before making a decision where to go to receive treatment. The problem is that they have so many systems and everything is very fragmented, and it's very hard to quantify progress in different types of situations. And again, we believe that one of the big impact that the spatial computing era will bring is that suddenly you can measure a lot of things that until now was basically impossible to measure. If just to give you an example, we are measuring every time someone is putting a VR headset on, range of motion, response time, smoothness, peak velocity, eye tracking, respiratory, pain scores, anxiety, stress. Like, every time someone is putting a VR headset on, they're stepping into a virtual reality treatment room. But the beautiful thing about that virtual treatment room, besides the fact it can be fun and engaging and not boring, we're getting a snapshot about their outcomes. And now the clinician can actually see how the trends looks like. They can compare and assess how those things will supposed to behave, intervene when needed, and maybe not intervene when it's not needed. So there's a lot of things that I think this data analysis will bring to the table, but it's on us to make sure that consumers and patients are feeling comfortable that we are sharing this data for their benefit with their clinicians, not to monetize it in order to do other stuff with it, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to do if you want to use the data the right way.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about is taking a lot of different pieces of information or data and then be able to look at them together and then have some new value there that's created. And we see that across the board with connected devices. I know Steve with Alarm.com and the Cherish announcement at CES and all that Alarm.com does in terms of the platform, it really is bringing it all down for the end customer in a simple, easy, engaging experience. And so, I don't know if you want to touch a little bit more on the value of that data that Alarm.com, all that's coming along with the platform and how that's leveraged to really enhance and build the experience for the consumer or the end user.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So look, Aaron and Roland's last 2 points, you're collecting a whole bunch of data about what people are looking at in a headset, which is not something people even know you can collect, right? And they trust you to protect that data. On the other side, Roland, you made the point about you look at Facebook or Instagram where you get feeds that are most useful to you. It's most useful to you and to those providers because they know they make the most money off those clicks. So they have a business model tied to monetizing that data for their purposes. Companies like ours would be out of business if we monetize that kind of data. You can imagine all the information that goes on in a home. We know when someone's there. We know when you're in your car. We know when a door opens. We know when a motion sensor fires. That data is very private and very important information that we lock down. In fact, we don't even give that information to many of the people in our company. We have a dedicated team, the only team allowed to look at it. Even our CEO can't see that data. So it's very important to protect that, but it's also important to turn that into products that help the consumer. One of the ways we do that is we tend to build a model on every home. Because we have all that data, we kind of learn what's normal for the patterns of behavior in a home. And then even if your system is not armed, we'll alert you to a trend that doesn't look right for you. So for instance, if your bedroom window opens at 2 a.m, something that typically doesn't happen, we don't know if that's you going out to get a breath of fresh air or an evildoer trying to get in, but we do know that's not normal for your home and we alert you to it. You can imagine all the other things that these connected systems can do if they can talk to each other. And it's one of the benefits of what we try to do is connect them all together, protect all the data, and provide real services that you have a hard time living without.
Great comments there. Matt, did you? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Roland. Yeah.
Just to clarify what I meant with the Facebook and Instagram analogy, it's just they've done a very good job at showing the most relevant content at the top. I absolutely don't think smart home cameras companies or video doorbell companies should try to monetize the data. I don't think that's a good idea.
I think
I do think you should leverage it.
I'm sorry, we're living in a world where that might happen.
Yeah. So I do think you make a good point that a company like Alarm.com has so much relevant sort of higher level data that can be used to improve the user experience and safety for the end user. Yeah.
Well, and I've got a quick question from our audience here. So our data does end up showing that consumers trust the security players, and trust is this really important word along with reliability. But do you think that the security industry has been slow to capitalize on that strength? And so that could go to Matt, Roland, or Steve, I think, as best responders there. Steve, I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Parks asked a question 3 or 4 years ago about the connected home and the healthcare services that might be offered on top of other things you're already providing. And the question was, where would you go to find these services? And I think the answer was like a senior consultant, which I think was your top line, which didn't exist in the world that we live in. And then the second one was your home security provider. And I think it's a privilege to be considered as the provider of services like this because you already trust them to protect you. And if you think about it, the only service that a company like ours is providing is to make sure we've got your back when things are bad. And that's what you want when things go poorly. So in the home health arena, and the reason why we're so excited about the trends there and the things we did with Cherish is we want to produce products that extend that bubble of safety beyond just your home to people you care about that aren't living with you in all the other facets and walks of life that you care about. And at the end of the day, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, doorbell cameras and basically any camera is way up at the top of problem solving. What we're trying to sell is safety. And safety as a service is, if you could bubble it in one category, is the thing people can't imagine their life without. And they want to know they're protected. So everything we mentioned up to now, including the data, is important for companies like ours to protect.
Absolutely. Matt, you want to jump in?
No, I think, yeah, to your point about the protection of that data and the use of it in responsible ways, that's, a really important part of, everything from the Avani side, right? We're enabling occupancy sensing across, millions to tens of millions of devices at the click of a button. Now, we're doing that through OEM partners with local library files where they have no means of getting any data to us, right? So Avani has backed down of having a cloud because that means that there's nowhere for someone to send the data. There's nowhere for a data breach to take place, right? It has to be within a trusted partner's ecosystem. And that really helps alleviate consumer concerns about where the data goes and what that can be done. For us, we look at what we enable for partners is, they've been selling widgets. So light bulbs, switches, outlets, routers, stuff like that. And at the click of a button, you can turn those into something that can be the basis for a security system, for a home awareness solution, right? And then that can be integrated into a broader context based on systems knowing how to talk to each other, which is, I think, a really important role that standards like Matter or security providers such as Alarm.com, ADT, Residio, etc., right? They can all play a role as kind of those trusted higher levels. And by looking at the data coming out of the various subsystems, where each subsystem plays a part, right? Like you wouldn't use an Avani Sensify detection area to detect what's going on in a small closet. You'd put a PIR there. You wouldn't use us to figure out what's going on at the front door. You've got a video doorbell, right? If you want video verification, obviously we don't do anything video wise. And I think it's the combination of all the parts, which there's an education gap, but also just a knowledge of what's in the space where an overall better integrated solution set will achieve the best performance outcome for any given consumer. And so there's a lot of pieces kind of working together and coming together. And for me, right, I know this space really well. I can build a really great solution for myself, but to get to that tipping point where it all comes together, there need to be better tools, better trusted players to bring those pieces together intelligently for the best outcome for a specific use case for a specific individual. And that's going to be a real challenge for everyone going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the partnerships are a requirement, and it seems like the industry has completely woken up to that fact, and working many companies working in lots of different areas to build those bridges across ecosystems, and sometimes even with each other, even competitors. So that co-opetition is very interesting. I wanted to see, does Jeff or Roland, did you want to have any comments on the role of data before we talk a little bit about the requirements for support, which was the next topic? So Jeff, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. So data plays a very important role in terms of our algorithm and product. For us, it's it's about like using this we're dealing with a very specific type of data, like the fridge images, like all your pantry images. Those are not widely available on the internet. And for any AI system to work, you need to find the better data you have, the better outcome you might have. So we use this data to train our model. And given the situation about like OpenAI and other companies, the way they're doing or improve their product is to scrape all the data, basically in the internet, like any data they can scrape, they can use that to train their AI models. And for us, we really see this as a strength, is the more private data you get, and then more specific model that you can train. So, I would say that OpenAI can do a lot of things like really well, but when it comes to recognizing this fridge image, like individual items level, it's not doing as good as we are. You might ask, why is that important? What I think is when you have a humanoid robot in your home, like you ask it, get me some like beer from what, can't name a brand. So this this robot needs to go to the fridge and open it and use its computer vision system to recognize this item and get it for you. So it's just a very narrow, specific use case for computer vision, and data is everything in this particular case. So yeah, I think we value it very much. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and certainly being able to help build the algorithms and the predictiveness of the future built off of existing data, that historical data set. We at Parks Associates, we're a big believer in the historical data set helping lead the way and understanding the future, which is one reason why, you know, we think our data holds so much value on the consumer data side, because we can see across decades of time how these products and solutions have grown up in those inflection points. Before we go on to support, Roland, did you want to comment on data, or you want to lead us into any comments on how all of this connected hardware has new requirements for support, and what's that going to be looking like? So feel free to jump in on the data side or support, whatever you'd like to.
Yeah, so just quickly on data. So we train our AI models, we obviously need lots of data, really lots and lots of data, so both images and videos. So we have our own data sets, more than 30 million images and videos, really high quality, collected really for this purpose, for the smart home camera and the video doorbell purpose. But then at the same time, we also see that OEMs, so the smart home camera and video doorbell OEMs, they also have a lot of their own internal data, and they see that as strategic and want to leverage it. So there, for those customers, we enable them to fine tune our already trained models on their data, and we do that completely in their environments, their development environments, to fine tune those models for their specific camera characteristics, camera positions, and sometimes there are specific use cases that they're trying to solve. Yeah.
And maybe you can comment also on your decision making with the companies who are embedding your AI tech into their hardware. I mean, are you evaluating those hardware manufacturers in terms of how they use data? Does that come into the discussion over who you're working with, depending on what they might do with data or not?
So we're trying to help them to build a full solution that is also privacy compliant. In the US and all the relevant states, and all states have evolving and different legislation on this. So we try to help them where they should be running what, when they should be running it on device, when they can run it in the cloud, which component from the whole solution they should be running on device, where images should be stored, all these different components.
Yeah. So that's a big priority then.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments on the support side, and you know how hardware now is hard to exist and be connected without the support, right? Consumer things don't work, or they stop working, and so then what? Roland, is that anything you want to comment on, or we could also jump over to Steve, perhaps?
I think Steve has a stronger opinion on this.
I love this question, Elizabeth. Look, our whole company is B2B to C, because we go through a dealer who then has the relationship with the consumers, because things sometimes, you know, need that kind of support. When you think about a typical home, even beyond the smart home, you know, our homes are Venn diagrams of electrical systems, plumbing systems, heating systems, entertainment systems, and any one of those things breaks, most humans can't figure it out. I'm actually a victim of this week. I came home from CES and our heater wasn't working. What was surprising that during the whole time I was at CES, I kept getting notifications through my alarm.com app that my heating system might be on the brink. And because some of our dealers aren't heating experts, they're smart home installers, they have a relationship with our HVAC systems to actually connect to a pro who can then service that for them. Inside baseball, a lot of our dealers didn't want to install thermostats because they didn't want to answer the phone call. So now they have a solution to do all that. And it's just sort of a leading indicator for the complexity of the smart home and the need for professionals that kind of do this and understand it for you. My biggest fear, my wife's biggest fear is, are people still coming out of school know how to do plumbing and electrical and heating? Or are we going to be in a world where we just won't have those service providers anymore? I hope not, but who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do want to get back to Aaron on his comments with the AI psychologist, but we'll leave that here towards the end. Matt, did you have any comments on support that you wanted to add in, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, one of the comments from a fellow panelist at CES, Keith from Ubiety, mentioned that, one system plus another system should be worth more than the individual sum of the parts, right? And he said 1 + 1 = 5, but it's basically how big can you make that number when you put stuff together? And I think articulating what pieces of systems are complementary to each other and how they fit together, and avoiding the idea that kind of one system or one technology can do it all, is, I think, a really important thing we've got in the current environment, right? You want stuff that is best in class in each area to solve specific needs, and then that all gets put together. And I think for the DIY crowd that is kind of the current smart home user, I think there is a group of people that are pretty good at that. Not amazing, but they're getting there. And then you've got the professional crowd that I think is well suited. Your Alarm.coms, your dealers, your ADTs, Vivants, etc. They can put together solutions as groups of best in class and use all the stuff for what it's built for, and then combine it to be better than the sum of its parts, right? If you're from a context perspective, you can do like facial recognition, detecting what phones are home, etc., for like this like known class of detection, right? And then you've got this unknown class of detection where you've got activity typically done with RF sensing, PIRs. You can do that with cameras as well, right? And by combining those two pieces of information, right? If I get a PIR alert, but a known phone is home, right? That's probably somebody that forgot to disarm the system. If I get a contact sensor that goes off and I have no indication that anyone who's supposed to be in the home is anywhere nearby, that's probably something's going on. But also if it's just a contact sensor and there's nothing that goes off in the house, maybe it's a lower level alarm. And there's efforts within the security industry with like AVS-01 to kind of standardize those alerts so you get law enforcement response. And the overall kind of ecosystem of the systems engineering behind different pieces, how they combine the architecture thereof, is going to be, I think, really interesting in the next several years.
Well, yeah, and it's that use of all that data to have additional context and really understand how to make the best outcome. And I mean, we're seeing this, certainly this is going to impact people beyond their single family homes or their multifamily apartments, right? This is our local community. These are the police who have to respond. If we're talking about security, it could be doctors who are being responsive and they have the ability to have a prioritization of different patients and understanding who needs help the most right now over somebody else who maybe can wait a little bit longer, may not be in such dire need. And it does come back to this idea of AI getting infused in everywhere. And so, Aaron, I want to go back to you on the question of, the regulation around AI and how things might look if we're putting a headset on and now we're talking to a therapist and a therapist is listening and helping us manage our life problems or whatever is going on for that individual. Maybe it's your health, your personal health care, and figuring out how to manage the best treatment plan based on your own personal data, right? Which is different than all this clinical data that's out there. Of course, that's great, aggregated information on average outcomes based off of whatever information is available. But when you can then personalize it and get an outcome for that individual person with all this information, it's so powerful. So, Aaron, I'd love to hear more from you on where AI is going to take us in healthcare with outcomes, and then we can move to the other panelists.
So I think that on the technology side, I don't think there's really a debate whether or not we can get to that level of technology. I think now with the AI that we are all experiencing, it's easy to imagine how this will look like, right? You want to have the the AI recommending a treatment based on all the historical data that he is able to capture far better than a human can, and also take and aggregate all the data that he accumulate based on your behavior preferences and recovery. I do think in healthcare it will be very hard to cross the chasm of regulation liabilities, and I think it's very similar when I'm comparing the two to autonomous driving. You cannot allow yourself to be 99% right. Like once you have 1% of any type of non compliant type of treatment, that could lead to very bad results on the therapeutic side. So I think that's one problem we'll need to tackle as an industry. The second piece is the entire reimbursement, as I mentioned previously. Even though there are a lot of effort in the US to shift from the fee-for-service to something more of a value-based care, it's still, we're talking about maybe less than 5% of the market. So think about it, that the entire industry is incentivized by the number of procedures and the amount of time the clinician is actually doing. This is how the market is behaving. And now suddenly you need to convince payers and organizations to just use AI and not use clinicians at all, or to reduce the amount of time, meaning that by definition, if we won't solve the economical incentives, the revenue will actually decline instead of going up, right? So there's a lot of complexity that I think will emerge not on the technology side, but also but more of how you implement that into the systems, into workflows, with liabilities and different types of other limitations. Like, as I'm telling my team, all the non-sexy stuff, like to have an AI clinician psychologist that is actually doing a good treatment, we can get to that relatively fast. But all the other stuff will be very hard.
Well, and in this idea that we have competing interests over our healthcare versus money as a consumer is very concerning. Also, if you see private equity jumping in the game directly with healthcare, that's a flag. I'd be concerned, right? Are they prioritizing money over health? And if you look at the $90 billion profits we've got going on in pharma, there's good reason for everybody to be looking closely at how doctors are operating and the why behind it. So it's very interesting. And, Aaron, really loves some of the things that you're doing with technology that, it's really about the outcome of helping somebody in the end. And of course, the money has to be there to figure that out. And so we'll be watching along with many others, tracking these markets, particularly in healthcare. We've got a very quick ending question for you all, because it's amazing how quickly an hour can go by and our time is up. But I do want to see if you can briefly, in 30 seconds or less, respond to the question of what you see the biggest challenge in 2024. And it can be a broad view or very specific. And you're not allowed to say what somebody else said. So, Roland, we're going to start with you, and then we'll go to Steve after that. Aaron, Jeff, and Matt will end with you.
Sure. So I think it's around AI. So the image sensor, I think, is such a powerful sensor, both for safety, so to really understand what's going on, but also for making a home appliance personalized, from your TV to your coffee machine, etc. So I think we'll need to deploy a lot of cameras in and around the home, so that we can provide that value to the end user, to the consumer. And yeah, that can just only be done with cameras. But then lots of cameras in and around your home raises privacy concerns. So option one is to not stream the video at all and just process everything locally. But option two, that we're seeing more and more in the market, is for some devices where the users do want to be able to see the camera feed or do want to store it. A promising way to address those concerns then is with end-to-end encryption. But then to still be able to provide all these AI features, you have to run the AI locally on the device instead of the cloud. I think that's a big switch, big movement that we're going to see this year.
Okay, great. Thanks for those comments. Steve, go ahead.
Being an optimist, I can't answer a pessimistic question like that at the end, but let me give you both sides of it. I think the negative downside that we have to worry about this year is separating real from fake, which we've already had issues for in fake news over the last couple of years, but now it's gotten to a whole new level with generative AI, and it's actually really hard to know what's real. My dad has been victimized by somebody saying he's my son, calling him to get money from him, and on the phone it sounded like my son. They can actually make it really sound just like my son. So I'm worried about that. On the flip side, I think going back to the AI to help in your smart home, we, as Aaron mentioned at the beginning, we live in a 3D world. The very first computers were trying to replicate that with desktops and trash cans. I think we're also very vocal people, and we want to use our voice to control things. So I think AI is going to help the smart home replace the remote control with just our intent of what we want, and have it figure out what we need and work with all the different systems to make that a reality. Finally, putting the one person who knows how to use the smart home out of business.
Okay, great comments. Aaron?
So for us, I think in startup land, as long as the interest rate will remain high, it makes innovation, and progression harder. Because we do need to invest in our future, and usually it doesn't yield immediate returns. I think this year, to balance those two things in startup land, I think that will be the most difficult thing. But again, to end on an optimistic note, I do think there's a lot of technologies that are getting to a tipping point and maturity that will change productivity and will change how we are interacting with computers. So I'm very optimistic about this year.
Okay, thanks for those comments. Jeff, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I think for myself and for our company, the challenge is to grow the profits. So I think one thing that we have seen is startups needs to rely on generating its own rather than on the VC funding. It's been particularly true in the past couple of years. So that is for us. I think for all of us, one challenge that I really concern about is the geopolitical tension, and the world is not as safe as we grow up. So I think that's just one challenge for all of us.
Yep. Great comments there. Matt?
Yeah, I think for us, we look at kind of 2024 as a year where there'll be a huge amount of the RF sensing technology deployed in the world. And yeah, the biggest challenge, I think, is overcoming the stigma that it's this fanciful, magical thing that can't work based on some of what we've seen from the industry. And I think moving past the idea that we have to describe how the sausage is made and just prove that it works, right? Like, does a consumer care if it's AI behind the engine that picks up their face? No. They just care that it picked up their face. And I think that focus on kind of consumer outcomes and away from the AI bingo game, I think is going to be something that I think is going to be really important and a challenge to overcome, because it's so attractive to be so proud of, again, as a technologist, I love how stuff works, and I could go on and on about how stuff works and all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, it either works or it doesn't. And that's, the bottom line. And I think that focus is going to be a big deal going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your thoughts on what you're seeing. And we appreciate your valuable time, and I hope to see you in person again soon. Thank you so much. And for the rest of our audience, we appreciate you joining us. If you're interested in